Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today's video is regarding the Tate brothers have been released. SubhanAllah. I guess the reason why I wanted to make this video was because the name, the brand, the divisive nature of these brothers, Andrew Tate in particular, really polarizes people and triggers people in a way that is only really akin to a figure like Donald Trump or somebody of the like. And so I wanted to jump into this video today because I saw on the news, and by the news I just mean my YouTube feed, because that's where most people get their news from nowadays, social media, that the Tate brothers were detained, if that's the right word, or at least there was a house arrest, a search going on, based on accusations, something along the lines of further human trafficking accusations, sex with a minor, and what was the one more? Money laundering. Now, what I wanted to say before I get into that is that the irony of this whole thing is that there is, in fact, serious money laundering, serious offences with minors, and serious trafficking going on in the world, 100%. And it's the irony there is that those who are actually doing that, you know, without getting too conspiratorial, conspiracy is basically just has anybody seen Matrix Resurrections? What people do is basically the truth is more bizarre than fiction itself. And basically these accusations, even without evidence, even without any real proof, tarnish and stain the reputation of even the most lofty individual. Of course, it's been done before with a variety of famous figures, but what seems to be interesting isn't it interesting how when you have for a lack of a better term, renegade, a counter narrative, a anti-elitist figure speaking against the structure, the hierarchy, the immense disparity of wealth, the economic slaves, all the stuff that, the people plugged into the matrix. You have those people. Now, they include Russell Brand recently got smeared with similar allegations. Even though both of these people, whether it's the Tate brothers or Russell Brand, also, I think what's really interesting is people don't understand, nor do I, but I have a touch of sympathy because I recognize that we all like to think that when the Nazi occupation takes over, like I'm rewinding now, fast forwarding. It could happen, who knows? Allah knows best. When you rewind to, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, when the Nazis were coming to power in Germany, we all think that we, as the apex of a moral citizen, the pinnacle of a just and upright person, would speak out against the system. It would be a situation of us, hiding the discriminated minority groups in our basements, in our attics, and risking our own lives to save other people. But we don't all know this, but I'm telling you right now, you would not be that person statistically, because if you have 100 people, one person would be that person. And we can't all be that one person. It's statistically impossible. So likewise, my point is that Money, fame, and power inherently changes people, or at least 99 people. And when you are a tall, good-looking, wealthy, powerful individual who attracts a lot of female attention, it's going to be a rather difficult situation. And this is where I have a bit of sympathy for the people. Now, and amongst drugs and alcohol and youth and immaturity, I'm sure some mistakes would have been made. Now, this is not for me to diminish the severity of, real charges that come to fruition based on evidence. People who, human trafficking is one of the most egregious crimes possible, an absolute evil thing. Money laundering, this is commonplace amongst all people with money. I know it's obviously, what's it called? It's attributed to kind of drugs and gangs, but this is happening amongst the civilized and well-dressed elites as well. They're called tax havens. I know that's not officially money laundering, but that's not so much my point. And then the minors thing, obviously, leave the minors alone. But isn't it ironic? I mean, what was really funny was, the thing is with Andrew Tate, I was never a Tate fanboy until very recent times when I realized how divisive he was and how unreasonably emotional people got just at hearing the name. And I was like, well, let me look into this guy. And then when I realized that the majority of what he's saying is completely reasonable, yes, with some vulgar language, which I personally would not encourage, nor do I condone. Yes, with a lot of footage from, bear in mind, quite a long time ago. A man changes a lot in 2, 5, 8, 12 years. And so giving him, again, as we should in the Islamic tradition, thinking the best of people and giving people the benefit of the doubt, somebody who has embraced Islam in very recent times, there's a settling in period. You've got to realize that to stop, look at our own lives. I can speak about myself. When you move away from drugs and alcohol, pornography and fornication, when you move away from all of the stuff that, parties and nightclubs and girls and, the lack of discipline in relation to your spiritual life, you've got to suddenly, you're now learning a new language, embedding yourself into effectively, obviously a new community, but it's a multicultural community. You have new expectations, new disciplines, new challenges. It's not something, a click of a finger where you can change. And so, if the man has his top off in a video, again, this might be disliked in Islam, but there's more important matters at hand, I would suggest. Now, when you're a public figure with great influence, of course, your actions now should be contemplated deeper. Anyway, digress. Back to my point where I was saying that it's funny how, Andrew Tate himself said that, I can't remember his name, it's the recent guy, Hugh someone or other, the BBC presenter who's just been done for child porn on his laptop or something. And it's when he is in the BBC broadcast is slandering the Tates for their human trafficking accusations. And he just said forever that will be his favorite clip, the irony of the whole thing. And the other thing I find fascinating is how quickly people supposedly of the democratic, just, liberal Western democracy, supposedly, that we have, are completely happy to fall prey to the public relations propaganda campaigns. That's just basically what the mainstream media says without any further investigation. Oh, you're Andrew Tate, the human trafficker. It's like, well, do they not know that's a accusation where they've been reprimanded? Is that the right word? They've been taken into custody. They've been held and detained with no evidence, taken away from their families for 3 months and then been put under house arrest for another, God knows how long it's been, 6 to 12 months. And no evidence has come to light. And then the same thing happens again with more accusations, baseless charges that now bring, before it was human trafficking, now they've added sex with minors and money laundering to kind of make a trifecta of obviously things that are incredibly reprehensible. So it's just smearing the name, but also taking people away from their daily lives. And what I've thought about it is, wow, like on one side, it's almost like maybe Andrew Tate thought he was being Neo. Maybe thought he was, he could kill the Agent Smiths. But what it makes you realize is that if you have a family, yes, you want to free some minds. Yes, you want to talk about interesting interesting topics, have fascinating conversations that can bring different sides of the debate and make people think. And, these conversations, the reason why I do this channel is because I like to talk about these things. And I don't like to just take, the matrix mainstream narratives, the propaganda. I know that there is more, another side to the coin. And my point is, though, but when it comes to, when you get to that pinnacle, when you do become a Trump and a Tate, then obviously it's going to be straight assassination. It's going to be straight legal attacks. And at that point, is it really worth it? Because now your life's in jeopardy, your family's at risk, you can't see your own children, you're not sleeping as well at night. I mean, when I was listening to him the other day, he was talking about how, the people at the bottom and top of society have almost the same stress levels, the highest stress loads, and it's the people in the middle that I'm quite happy to be somewhere in the middle, maybe, somewhere, center to the to the right in this case, in not politically, but in relation to being somebody kind of maybe, inshallah, of social, financial standing, who has it slightly easier than harder, who has more influence than is in the shadows, but also to tread carefully, because it's a big system to fight up against. And when all these things can be pushed against you, no man wants to, but then dying in the cause of what you believe is justice. And it's not necessarily what you believe is justice. It is what is justice. Where did I hear this? When I was listening to something just the other day talking about, that's your truth and I have my truth. This is what the world's come to, where now treading on eggshells because of the fear of offense and this new age movement of madness, we can't even establish that there is an objective truth. There is simple facts. No, it's your truth and my truth, so we can both be wrapped in cotton wool and bubble wrap and both live in a happy illusion or delusion. Of course, in Arabic, dunya, the world that we live in, also translates to delusion. We're in an illusory. It is Matrix-esque. And I watched Matrix Resurrections just the other day, and I thought it was a really awesome fourth movie to the original trilogy. Something that's incredibly hard to do, of course, because, the first three, is tricky territory to add to those great films, the first, of course, being the best. So obviously go check out The Matrix. Now, it's not literally that I believe that this is a simulation, that we're really being run by AI robots, but it's more the analogy that people are plugged in. And I'll give you an example right now. I may have said this before in the past. I've spoken to quite a few people about this recently. Is even when we know or sense, have a gut feeling about the truth, about the reality of things, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to declare it. Often people prefer the delusion. They prefer to be plugged in than accept the reality. So a couple of examples of this experiments, I believe it's like CIA vibes, where you probably heard of them before. People in a kind of a waiting room, all the people are plants. One person is like a legit person, doesn't realize it's an experiment. A beep goes off every 2 minutes, And it only takes several times before the person who's a legitimate person starts standing up with the rest of the room. An even more pertinent example would be those people who are plants get shown a piece of paper with an image on it. That image is a square. And when they say, what is this? When they're asked, what is this? They all say circle. When you get to the normal person, they know that they're seeing a square, but yet they still say circle. So we literally will adjust. We will join in on the delusion just to be part of the group think. And COVID-19 was a prime example of that, completely forgotten about. Every now and again, people, oh, I've got COVID, they've got a cold. SubhanAllah. And it's just a madness. It's an absolute madness. I think that it's interesting that when somebody, it's the irony of the West, where at least in the countries of dictatorship, in, I don't know what ones you want to call, like North Korea, China, Russia, at least the system is the system. The madness, again, the Matrix-esque reality of the West and United Kingdom, where I reside. And I love the United Kingdom in a myriad of ways, not least because North London is red, not least because of the beautiful countryside across the entire island. It's just idyllic. Not least because of its history and its impact on the world at large, global affairs. But now it's just becoming ridiculous that really freedom of speech and democracy is being propped up, and it has no real legitimacy in this modern world. And people that believe in that, I think they're pulling the wool over their eyes. That's just my opinion. And that's what the channel's about, is me sharing my opinion. So anyway, the Tate brothers, they have been accused of new crimes with no evidence thus far released. No doubt their name will be slandered further, and the system is just pushing them to see if they're going to break. It's something that we can all learn from, that basically people get away with crimes if they are powerful enough. Now, don't get me wrong, like the Tate brothers have a lot of money and a lot of influence and a lot of power, but they can't compete. There's people with a lot more money and power than them. Even if you say that they're worth 500 million or a billion, that's, there's a lot of people out there with a lot more than that when it comes to, royalty around the world and dictators around the world, corporations and their leaders around the world. And so I thought I'll just jump on. It's kind of relevant news. It's fascinating. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all people who are listening and their families. May He make our lives as easy as they should be. Not to say that we're going to completely avoid the toils of this world, hardship and difficulties. Of course, we're going to face trials and tribulations, but may Allah Azza wa Jal make them improve us, make us stronger. Obviously, we will not be burdened with more than we can bear. But I just wanted to briefly talk about the fact that a lot of what, for example, the Tate brothers talk about, I just don't understand why people are so triggered by it. It is not gaining financial freedom and independence, is not building physical strength and health important to be able to, first and foremost, look after yourself and lead yourself and keep yourself in good stead, and then allow that to ripple to your closest loved ones. I don't understand what the problem is. And when a reality is spoken about that, most people are wages, so to speak, effectively economic slaves, there is an economic elite, there's a huge disparity of wealth, paying your taxes, working a 9 to 5, kind of eating up what you're being given, kind of being pulled down and ridiculed if you have any aspiration or you seek anything more for yourself, or you step outside of the mainstream narrative. Is it not good? Is that not freedom of speech, to start allowing people to discuss different ways to live? Now, the reality is we have an issue in the West, certainly, and this is provable based on the decline of the modern family, decline on marriage, decline on birth rates. Men, obviously, you've got the MGTOW movement, I think, was it Men Go Their Own Way? Men are always thinking, like, this ain't even worth it to shack up with a woman, to risk half my estate, to go through all of the sacrifice and stress and pressure of raising a family. I'd rather just look after my own. I'd rather just shack up with a dude. 2 incomes, no responsibilities, live the city life, get drunk on the weekend, put all my time and effort into myself, going to the gym, saving my money to go on holiday. It's not really worth it. So men are not even stepping up and being the leaders to pass on their genetic code, to do literally what religiously or irreligiously is basically the purpose of our DNA. Is there's a drive to replicate. There's a drive to have impact, to leave legacy. And when that's subdued, that's a really scary time. Like, that is the population, the threat to population right there, is that basically all of the fools who buy this mainstream narrative will not continue their bloodline. Simple as that. Now, you find amongst the elite and wealthy that none of those people are buying this, because they're the ones propagating it. Of course they're getting married and having kids, because that's how you take 2 people and within 50 years create 50 to 100 people, and those people came from you. You can't do that if you are single, if you are having abortions, if you're using contraception. You can't do that if you're shacking up with somebody of the same sex. It's biologically not possible. You have to then, which, there are a lot of children, unfortunately, who are in a care system, who need fostering, who need to be adopted. So perhaps that's an option there, but it's different to, I would argue, your own offspring. I think that it's a worthy and noble pursuit, certainly. But I think what resonates with me is that the kind of closest kin should take responsibility for that person. If my wife and I, for example, passed on, then our son would go to, his uncles and aunties, for example. So if somebody should find, even if it's a third cousin, even if it's a great uncle, even if it's somebody close to them, and not everybody has this outlook, of course, but they should be responsible. I think that, random, it stays with people. If you've been fostered or adopted, you have a yearning to connect and contact, like, where you came from. You came out of another human. SubhanAllah. So anyway, I just got onto the ramble, got onto the mic. You know how it is. I'll leave it there. There's obviously a lot more to talk about. I was going to go down some different tangents. But the main thing is, express your yin yang, your masculinity and femininity, however you want to. It makes no difference to me. But I just find it fascinating that people can't do something as basic as give people the benefit of the doubt, allow them to basically shine their light. And whatever happened to innocent till proven guilty, I'll be the first to put my hands up if there's stone cold evidence, even though people can be set up, but they're there, and say, look, the writing's on the wall. But the writing's not on the wall yet. It seems like a pretty clear setup and attack, and that's my stance on the situation. Take it or leave it, think what you want. I think that the self-proclaimed, to finish on this, the self-proclaimed misogynistic identity of, for example, Andrew Tate, as far as I'm aware, misogyny is a hatred or discrimination against women. It seems pretty clear to me that he doesn't hate women, because he has a mother, he has a sister, he has a daughter. Like, you can't hate those people. I think what he does have is discrimination. And to be discriminant, one would have to, discrimination's almost a choice between, a plethora of paths. And what I mean by that is, if you're walking late at night and you've got like a group of people that are kind of hoods up, smoking, drinking, bit of a gang vibe, a bit of a youth vibe, and you've got another path where there's like a couple, you know, an elderly couple, you're going to have to discriminate against that path in order to choose to go down that other path. So I think where he discriminates is he will have a prejudice. Now, these words discrimination and prejudice are obviously part of this mainstream narrative, this language, this linguistic takeover, where people don't even fully understand these words. Perhaps that would be one of my suggestions. And I'm not saying I am the apex of knowledge in relation to lexicon and dictionary, but my point is this, that when a prejudice can also be based on reasonable experience. So last time I went down that path and there was young people there with hoods on, there was, you know, a tense vibe. There was swearing, you know, they kind of tried to instigate a conversation with me. I just scurried on, didn't feel comfortable. So I have to discriminate those people based on a prejudice that is from an anecdotal prejudice. So if what Andrew Tate is saying, which is probably something we can all to some degree relate to, is that based on his, whatever it is, 36 years, 38 years, however old he is, experience, you know, or at large, women are more emotionally unstable, are generally physically weaker. Then in certain situations where you need stability and strength, he's obviously going to choose the path of his male brothers and cousins and, men. I don't understand the issue with that. I don't think that, like, we all have, it's like my analogy comes to football. Some players are better at defense. Some players are better at attack. Now, just because one player is less capable in one area, it's not like an attack on their character. It's just like you accept different people have different abilities. The whole thing of a team is that you work together. The player with a poor defense and the player with a poor attack will work in a partnership to complement one another. So anyway, I thought I'll leave it with that, because this word, it's just when you start calling somebody a misogynistic human trafficker, like, obviously that sounds terrible, but I don't actually think that either of those things are even true. I'm not saying just because somebody uses, and I would never use this when, speaking to my own wife or mother. I think that the word bitch is like, it's just a bit of it's a tense word. And I think people, when you get to a certain amount of, like, basically FU money, influence, status and power, you can almost start to do things because you can. And I'm not saying that's right. And I think that it's reprehensible that word's used. And I think that he probably, I don't know, I've never met the guy, but he probably regrets it himself, that if he just took maybe 5% of some of the things he said and the traits he said and the vibe he's given, and he just kind of squashed that, then a lot of this stuff would have been alleviated. And I bet he probably, whether he regrets or not is a different question, but probably thinks, in hindsight, if I realized what would come from it, it's one thing to say, bitches, pimps and cash and this and that, but it's like, it's this kind of GTA Vice City aura, this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's putting on it's a little bit of an act. Nobody is like a hard man all the time. Like I say, I've literally watched what he was talking about the other day, saying that, of course, he's a human being. We all have fragility. We all have weakness. None of us are perfect. Anyway, I think I've spoken long enough. And this channel certainly, although, the first videos were about Douglas Murray and that got a reaction, and this is another one about Andrew Tate. I think people like Douglas Murray and Andrew Tate there are individuals in society that have an influence, that ripple down to the rest of us. And so there's my piece on the recent news. Any comments, please do write down below. If you watch the videos as far, then certainly subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. Always remember, big up your good selves. Until next time, good folk, I'll be the same.